No exit polls.
No decision desks.
Just vibes. And the vibes this week.
We have a call to make.
Well, Jesse, the Fox News decision desk can now project that former President Donald Trump will win the New Hampshire Republican primary.
And before all that,
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is out. He has endorsed former President Donald Trump, and now it is officially a two-person race to become the Republican presidential nominee.
And the Supreme Court heard some very consequential cases this week.
Supreme Court heard arguments Wednesday in two cases that question a decades-old legal doctrine known as Chevron deference.
And without the Chevron deference doctrine in place, everything, and I mean everything in your life, could be affected.
Then we'll play a lightning round of It's Giving, invite you into our group chat, and leave you with a good vibe. Let's get into it.
the New Hampshire results are hot off the presses, and we have ourselves two winners declared from the New Hampshire primary.
Drum roll, please. Who possibly could it be?
We're all shocked to know that it's Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Can you believe it?
No, I'm shocked.
Donald Trump is officially the winner of the New Hampshire primary, which was very much expected, but not by as much as we originally anticipated. It's been quite competitive with Nikki Haley. So far, from the votes that we have in, which is about 30% of the overall vote, he's only leading Haley by single digits. Nikki Haley has over 45% of the vote, which is much higher than I anticipated. And I think a lot of people were expecting her to do.
Like I said, get me to South Carolina. And now I really mean it, because Nikki's going to go to South Carolina. We thought maybe before the New Hampshire primary results were in that maybe she would drop if it was a Trump blowout, but it's not. So
yeah, I genuinely thought anything above 30% was going to be really a big night for her, and to have her currently sitting at 45.5% is really impressive, and means that she is going to stick it out. She is saying in interviews that she's going to stay until Super Tuesday, which is in March. So this would mean that this sort of storyline keeps going for the next couple of weeks at least. But ultimately, is there a path for her to win the nomination? No.
I think no. My crystal ball is saying no. But I'm super curious about, where do all of those voters go? Where do all of those Nikki Haley voters go when all is said and done?
Yes. Something else really stood out to me in the exit polling. When people were coming out of their polling locations, lots of reporters ask them questions. We call those exit polls. They also do it over the phone for people in states that do mail-in voting and that kind of thing. And what really captured my attention from the exit polls was that 47% of Republican primary voters in New Hampshire said that Trump was unfit to be president if he's convicted of a crime. And I think that you're seeing a huge overlap between that percentage and the Nikki Haley 45%. And it's a big question. Do those people ultimately get on board with Trump when he wins the nomination and vote for him? Or are they going to sort of be like, I'm out, I'm not voting, I'm voting for Biden, anybody but a convicted felon? I don't know. I think that's TBD.
That's going to be an interesting kind of grab when all is said and done, to see where we can get those voters.
Agreed. If there is a reason for hope, if people are looking for a reason for hope, that is where it is that when you tell moderate, common sense people that they have a choice between a guy who's a few years older than the last time they voted for him, or a convicted felon, which it will be the case in a matter of months, that they're picking Grandpa Joe.
Yeah. They're gonna elect the guy who's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
But, speaking of the potentially convicted felon, he is not even clear who she is. And this could have just been a senior moment. But Trump is, not clear who his competition is.
They never report the crowd on January 6th. Nikki Haley, did you know they destroyed all of the information, all of the evidence, everything, deleted and destroyed all of it, because of lots of things. Like Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people.
Wait, the size of the crowd?
What
Do
crowd?
you mean the people who are now in prison?
January 6th.
This wasn't your inauguration. It was an attack on the Capitol. What are you talking about?
Right.
Oof,
it wasn't a pep rally. It was an insurrection.
Right. Right.
That's right. And he's also, again, it's all about the language use. Words matter. It is now the crowd. It is not the insurrectionists. It is the hostages now, not the convicted felons in jail.
Put up the photo of Elise Stefanik hiding from the so-called hostages on January 6th. The attackers in the Capitol, she's crouching behind. I just saw this on Twitter the other day. It's an amazing photo. You have to check it out. But let's call a spade a spade. Trump does not know Nikki Haley from Nancy Pelosi. He's trying to make a dig there at Nancy Pelosi, and he is calling her Nikki Haley multiple times. If this were Biden, of course, it's front page news on every conservative rag, but it's Trump, so he's going to get a pass.
Biden would be crucified if he had this senior moment. Truly. Right. Trump, no one seems to care. But, again, my hard-hitting Donald Trump reporting, he's old, baby. He's old. It's giving pot kettle. And
it's giving vibes. I mean, that is the definition of vibes, and why we called this podcast Vibes Only, not to weave it in again, but to weave it in
weave
again.
it in, Brian. Weave it in.
We are making tapestries over here.
We're quilting.
Is that it's the Biden vibe. Like, they have effectively branded him as the old man, and so it's like his vibes for him to mess up a name. And that's not Trump's vibe. Trump has escaped, even though they are almost the same age, Trump has escaped that vibe, and therefore nobody cares because it doesn't fit the branding. It doesn't fit the narrative that's being spun about him.
Totally. He's presented as younger than Biden forever, and now he's not. So welcome to reality, Donald Trump. You're old and you have senior moments.
And so Donald Trump just won the New Hampshire primary, but we also had a Democratic primary in New Hampshire.
Which, Brian, I truly need you to explain this to me, because I know that the DNC tried and failed to move the New Hampshire primary. Correct?
That's exactly right. So you don't have to look far on the internet to see why people are upset that Iowa and New Hampshire get to pick who the nominees are for president. These early states have a ton of weight in sending nominees on to ultimately win the nomination, to building momentum, to securing additional resources and fundraising for your campaigns. They are a big deal. It matters who wins early states. And so the Democratic Party, after 2020, said, okay, what does it look like to have more diverse states than Iowa and New Hampshire, which are both exceptionally white and do not reflect the diversity of our electorate, racially in particular, but in terms of the economy and other components as well. What does it look like to have more diverse states participate in the early nominating contests, like right up front? To do that, we need to reshuffle the calendar. And so there was a long process within the DNC to figure out, like, what is a more equitable way to do this. They decided to move New Hampshire back and to move Michigan, Nevada, and South Carolina forward. Okay. And the problem with that is New Hampshire is run by Republicans. And even though the party chooses how to nominate their nominee for president, the state decides when and how to administer elections, because they are state-funded elections. And so there's a law in New Hampshire that says we have to be the first primary in the country, no matter what. And and the Republican governor and Republican-led state legislature refused to change that law or to work with the DNC to change the date just of the Democratic primary. And so therefore, the DNC responded by saying, okay, we're not going to assign any delegates to the winner of the New Hampshire contest. And so they effectively said, New Hampshire, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. And that is why Joe Biden, being very closely associated with the DNC as the current president, who is a Democrat, could not participate in the primary. And so his name did not appear on the ballot. Instead, Democrats in the state ran a write-in campaign on his behalf, which, as we know, as of just a number of minutes ago, was effective. He won. And so he won a write-in campaign statewide in New Hampshire.
Something you mentioned, which I think is important as it relates to Nikki Haley in New Hampshire, is that the Republican governor did in fact endorse her, correct?
That's correct.
So that's got to help her vibe in the state.
100%. New Hampshire was make or break for Nikki Haley because New Hampshire has a lot of independent voters and has a different approach to how they choose the candidates that they support. They also have a really moderate, very popular Republican governor, Sununu, who was expected to run for president and did not. And he endorsed Haley and has done everything in his power to help her. And they have open primaries, right? Where you have independents who can vote in the Republican primary as well, undeclared voters who can vote in the Republican primary for Haley. And so if she did not do well there, then she was going to do well nowhere. Like it truly was game over. And I would expect her to drop out tomorrow. But now that she's like putting up over 45% as of this recording, she's going to stay in.
She's steamrolling into South Carolina, baby.
Totally.
Here she comes.
Terminator has started.
Yeah.
We are now entering the Terminator franchise era because AI has hit the presidential contest. And it only took 2 primaries. It only took 2 states for it to happen. But in New Hampshire, we had our first robocalls that used AI to mimic Biden's voice. And
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. It's bad news bears. It's bad news bears.
So people were getting phone calls. Like, I'm a New Hampshire resident. You get a phone call from a number, you answer it. It's Joe Biden's voice. Not actually, it's the AI version of Joe Biden's voice asking you what or telling you what to sit out.
Yeah, it told people not to vote on Tuesday.
It's important that you save your vote for the November election. Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again.
That is so creepy.
Yeah, that's horrible. So that's not Joe Biden. Obviously, he never said that, and it's untrue.
Nor would he believe that. Your vote matters. Okay,
Always.
Your vote counts.
You're talking to 2 people who will always tell you to vote.
Who will relational organize you to death. You have to vote.
Yeah, and that's not the only case. So we also had the Dean Phillips campaign. Remember, he's a Democrat who's challenging Biden. Use ChatGPT to create DeanBot, which was a AI program that you could talk to like it was Dean Phillips. ChatGPT has rules against that. Shut it down real quick. They said no, and booted that person. But it's happening. Like it is absolutely here. This is happening in real time. And I think a lot of people are not prepared for the potential consequences here.
Also, like, not to be ageist, but elderly people or people who are still using phones in a way that, Gen Z and millennials don't, in terms of if I see someone calling me and I don't know the number, I'm not answering that phone call. Period. You're going to have to leave a voicemail, identify yourself, all of the above.
Totally. Right.
It's so insidious.
It is. I would love to see the stats. We should bring somebody on a future episode to talk about spotting misinformation online and who's the best at it. Because I think that there are studies about I think Gen Z, sorry, young people, do not scream at me. I think that Gen Z is actually way more susceptible to misinformation than we all think, that they're digital natives and they actually know what's what and what's real and what's not. And I think that's actually not necessarily borne out in the research, but let's bring an expert on sometime and find out. I think that would be interesting.
We need to throw Gen Z into 2001 chat room and see how they did.
Well, while we do have to continue worrying about 2 elderly gentlemen who are headed to the ballot box in November, by all accounts, we do not have to worry about one clown of a man.
Meatball Ron,
the robot. Ron DeSantis is out. Everyone celebrated. It was a happy day when he announced it. It was right after Iowa. He got out before New Hampshire. And sort of the big question over everything is why? Why drop out right before New Hampshire? I'm curious if you have a take.
My takes are all kind of petty and social, but
that's why you're here.
Exactly. He dropped out right before New Hampshire. And then today, a few hours ago, he went on the record when Trump was talking about his indictments or any criminality in Florida, saying that he has the power of the veto pen as governor. So the timeline of a 24-hour timeline of dropping out, kissing the ring, then saying, but nay, Donald Trump, I am still the governor of Florida and can do what I want to do. So it's a very interesting social dynamic. And by the way, I hope everyone is sat in their chair. Ron DeSantis is 45 years young. He is a young man as it relates to political, entities in this country. So his political career is new by all, understanding of what we look at for a president who's, everyone's old, basically.
Yeah, I agree with you. He dropped out much sooner than people anticipated. We thought this was going to go on until Super Tuesday. The Trump campaign wasn't planning on winning the nomination until mid-March. And now we're talking about potentially it happening in January. I have a theory that it's actually much more about 2028 than it is about any of the data in 2024. And so one way that this plays out is that Ron DeSantis stays in and he does worse and worse state after state, and Nikki Haley consistently overperforms him. And then going into 2028, that would be the dominant narrative that Nikki Haley was just much better than him and preferred. Whereas I think that by dropping out early and endorsing Trump and him trying to hug his opponent, right?
Daddy.
Who's been beating up on him for literally months. He's trying to undercut that narrative and make it more about oh no, I lost to Trump. It had nothing to do with Nikki Haley because she's going to lose too. And then in 3 years from now, when we're looking back, we won't remember, or the average voter will not remember, oh yeah, well, Haley actually was within 2 points of Ron, whatever.
Totally.
We will just remember it was the Trump show and this is a clean slate. And then he gets to run again, not as a loser, but as sort of a blank slate.
And
rather
probably
than somebody
even
who got
stronger
3%.
Totally.
Right.
And I think he's, rather than staying in the race and belittling his brand day by day by day, he goes back to his full-time job as governor of Florida and builds his brand up. So then, come 2028, he's strengthened as opposed to terribly weakened by Donald Trump.
Totally. Yeah, I think that it's damaging to come in 3rd or 4th place repeatedly in these early nominating contests and then drop out. I mean, think about a Jeb Bush. It's what did Jeb Bush do? What place did he come in? I don't even know. I don't even remember, but I know that it was not 1st or 2nd. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he has a place in his dad's heart, and I think that's where it stays. But Ron DeSantis basically acknowledged that Donald Trump wins, it could have ramifications for democracy as we know it. And he has even said on the record multiple times that no matter what, Donald Trump is not going to accept election results, period.
If Trump loses, he will say it's stolen no matter what. Absolutely. He will try to delegitimize the results.
So it is confusing and disingenuous, and just kind of speaks to, the United States political system as a whole, for the GOP, that everything just seems fake. And we have this person who is the front runner for the Republican nomination who has 91 charges for indictments, and no one agrees with him, but everyone's supporting him. It's what alternate reality am I living in? It's
egregious. Before we put him to rest, the other thing I want to unpack with Ron was his horrible campaign. Politico had the most searing coverage the day after he dropped out. I have to read this to you.
They read him to filth.
To filth. The library is open. Ready? As for the reasons behind the DeSantis disaster, there's plenty to point to, starting with the candidate himself, who by multiple accounts suffered from overconfidence, arrogance, and social unease. Add to that a flawed media strategy, a truly disastrous split campaign structure, and a badly mistaken reading of the GOP electorate that DeSantis had been targeting MAGA voters, ready for a new standard bearer who didn't really exist. Honestly, nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, lest
understood
we
the prompt.
forget.
He was a disaster. It was a mess. His campaign was a mess. He burned literally tens and tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, and accomplished what? He got how many votes in Iowa?
It was a poor brand building exercise for him. The vibes were so off from ground zero when he did his Twitter announcement or X announcement for his campaign with Elon Musk, and it was a technical disaster.
All right, sorry about that. We are kind of melting the servers.
They just keep crashing, huh? So I think we're back online here. All right. Well, it's certainly an incredible honor to have Governor DeSantis make this stark announcement.
Are you there? Can you hear us? I think you're breaking.
I'm here.
Excellent.
I am running for president of the United States to lead our great American comeback.
I would have thrown in the towel at that point and just said, you know what? Something here, the universe is whispering. It's not the right time. Let's just not do this. But you know what? Ron kept it going. And here we are now.
I can see that. Glenn is at 8 p.m. with the tweet. Never mind.
Honestly, I thought it was.
Never mind.
It's not working for me.
I take it back. This is all too much. Well, bye, Ron. We will not miss you. And I hope that Florida kicks you out of office real soon.
Okay, I want to preface this segment with just the acknowledgement that the Supreme Court is difficult to comprehend for various reasons. One, we're not lawyers. We're not legal scholars. We're not writing amicus briefs. But the Supreme... Okay, send me one. The Supreme Court... We will be talking about the Supreme Court more in this year 2024 of the Lord than we have probably our entire lives. And there are going to be cases on the Supreme Court docket that will have fundamental implications on the way our government functions as we know it and on our basic human rights.
Totally.
And we're going to talk about one of them briefly today. We're not going to get in the weeds on it, but we're going to talk a little bit about Chevron.
Totally. We're going to give you the non-wonky take on a kind of wonky thing because it affects everybody. The Supreme Court has used this doctrine called Chevron deference that says that when something comes down to a matter of technical expertise, like in the federal government, like the EPA regulating pollution, you have to know like how many like particles per square million miles of particles. I don't know, but like super technical stuff that only professionals in that field understand. Congress is able to delegate that responsibility of regulating at those levels of technicality to federal agencies. And that is Chevron deference. And they have said that the federal government has the power to sort of move within these boundaries, like set out by Congress and to create policy in that sense. And what the current case is threatening at the Supreme Court right now is that it would roll back or eliminate Chevron deference. And that would mean that Congress had to pass a law every time we wanted to change, like whether forever chemicals were defined as X or Y, or whether how many particles per whatever are allowed in the air or in our water or anything. And Congress is not equipped to legislate at that level of specificity. And so this is a really big deal for how federal agencies are going to operate.
Yes. Congress, let's take the EPA, for example, or to your earlier point, an air quality statute or something. Yeah. The EPA currently has I'm using air quotes, but the jurisdiction to regulate and define what a particle count might look like, because there are people who work at the EPA who are PhDs or very highly educated in the science involved in that. Imagine if the power was taken away from those people who are extremely educated in the matter and put into the hands of Mitch McConnell, MAGA Mike Johnson, Chuck Schumer for that matter. I love Chuck. Is he an air particle? You know, does he know what's best for the health and well-being of our environment scientifically? Probably not.
We sell ads, Senator. Like Congress doesn't even know how Facebook works. Literally, like we see them hold these hearings, and they're asking the CEO of Facebook or Twitter or whatever, like literally, how does it make money? How does the platform work? Imagine them trying to legislate on super technical air pollution standards. And it's not even just a matter of expertise, because of course they have like professional staff, they have lots of resources, they have money, they can have people testify, but it's also about the sheer volume, that you have every federal agency, the largest employer in the country, doing and making these kinds of decisions at the same time, all of the time. And that is, I think, a really important tool in our fight against climate change. And a lot of the big societal problems that we face is that we need a more agile and a more responsive federal government, not one that bottlenecks absolutely every single emergency response in Congress, where we know that there's record gridlock. I've said before, we're having the least productive Congress we've had in several generations. Yeah. To give those people the power over whether my water is drinkable and my air is breathable is terrifying.
Truly, what do they know? Not much. It's going to leave them handcuffed to be able to actually effectively protect American, people and their interests and their safety. So the too long didn't read of this specific example is it's not going to be great.
Totally.
And the Supreme Court has not even flirted with the idea of ruling on the Chevron deference for 15 years, but it is very, very highly used in lower courts.
Yeah.
So
there are actually two separate cases this term that could affect Chevron deference. But more importantly, let me light a fire under everyone's ass by pointing out that this is at the very heart of the conservative playbook. They are trying to eliminate our ability to have a functioning government that can respond to problems and make people's lives better, at the end of the day. And so it's not fair, but we have completely different missions in what we're trying to accomplish. If you are somebody who thinks that we can actually make society better, that the future can actually be brighter, and that we can address the big challenges that we face if we work together and marshal resources effectively and think strategically and evolve technologically, all of these things. If you are someone who believes in that, then this should enrage you, because they are absolutely working decade after decade, year after year, to undercut even the chance, even the potential that we have to do that.
To make
this
progress
is another
as a
tool
country.
in that arsenal. Right. Exactly.
That's absolutely right. Dare I say it should chap your ass.
It should. It's chapped.
It's giving.
Speaking of explainers that we need to do, on Fox News, they were having a hard time understanding how someone could be popular in a primary, but not in a general election, which are completely different electorates. Maybe we can help them out.
How can you say that the guy who's beating me and will beat me for the rest of the primary will lose the general election, and then the loser of the Republican primary, Nikki Haley, will win the general election? Because that's her argument, and I don't understand it. Do you?
We do, Jesse. Wait, it's giving politics 101.
101.
It's giving intro to Poli Sci freshman year.
Yeah.
It's almost giving gaslighting.
Right.
Is he trying to trick her into saying something? That's really wild. Not to make any of our listeners whose full-time job it is not to talk about politics feel any type of way, but that's kind of basic for someone who literally spends all of their time ragging on politicians on TV.
Has a TV show and is getting paid millions of dollars a year to talk about politics to a very, very, very large audience. You need to have some basic fundamentals. I think we also have some really intellectual post-primary analysis from Marjorie Taylor Greene.
These are fake numbers. Nikki Haley does not have this much support. She's going to come out and claim that she's rising in the polls. All these fake news media people up here on this platform are going to claim that Nikki Haley is rising in the polls. It's a total, complete lie. Absolute lie. Tonight, Nikki Haley was defeated. The problem is she's going to be dumb enough and she's going to be a fake candidate and she's going to keep going and we're going to destroy her in South Carolina. It's going to be a complete humiliation. I can't wait to see it happen, so I'm fired
right now.
So we can officially say the Biden-Harris campaign has dementia just like the president. They forgot to put him on the ballot and their voters are having to write it in, and he's losing.
Not correct.
Joe Biden is losing the write-in here in New Hampshire. You can't say anything more pathetic than that.
Ew.
It's giving tipsy. It's giving aunt who had 3 too many glasses of wine at dinner.
And you ask, like, how are you? And she's like, let me tell you.
And she just unloads. Yeah, it's giving audition.
Delusional.
That is an audition for vice president. 100%.
Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to get snapped up.
That's exactly right. She was not speaking to the audience when she was speaking to camera. She was speaking to Daddy Don.
100%.
Hire me.
Yeah.
What a loser. Literally, what a loser.
It is also a premonition of the cries of fake elections and skewed results and fake candidates and on all of that we're going to continue to see from that wing of the party, if not the party as a whole.
That's right. To say it's a lie, it's like, it's not a lie. It's just the reality.
My group chat was literally blowing up with you today to the point that it was annoying.
That one?
Silence it. Yes.
LOL.
I was like, stop.
What were we even talking about?
I don't know. I couldn't I had like 200 messages. I couldn't go back and read.
Well, this is when everyone was like, DeSantis. Again, I try and keep it at the pop culture level. This tweet that I sent everyone because it was diva down, baby.
Diva down.
Remember when Meatball Ron wore that vest and those white boots during the hurricane aftermath tour? And of all the boots, people, you have a lot of choices in your life that you can make. One of the simplest choices you can make, depending on privilege, etc., is what you put on your body. Who on his team was like, these are the white boots you're going to wear? It's a tweet. We'll show it. Boots will be worn at half calf tonight. And it's just like a guy eating pudding, because lest we forget the pudding with the fingers, tweeting, and he has his white cowboy boots on. That was mine. That was a big one.
Ron looked like a literal Cabbage Patch Kid in those. It was really bad. I would say my group chats this week definitely blew up with an increase in Democratic fundraising texts. There was an aggressive amount this week. There's a big deadline coming up next week, and it's going to be bad all week long. I'm telling you right now. And people are sick of it. And they're honestly creating hilarious memes about it, but they're also very annoyed.
They are the definition of unhinged. It's like, knock, 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 knock. It's Nancy Pelosi. You're going to die if you don't give me $5.
Totally. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of ones just from candidates that you've never heard of. Just like, hey, I'm Lauren and I'm running for House District 10 in Idaho and I need your support in order to flip this district. And it's like, what? Who are you? And I'm saying that, me.
You know how I respond to all of them now?
Tell me.
You're barking up the wrong tree. You're barking up the wrong tree.
No, they're not, though. That's exactly, you are the exact tree that they are looking to bark up. Precisely.
No, but but my name and my number is just being sold left and right, and I'm over it. And the texts are getting increasingly unhinged. And by the way, boy who cried wolf. If everything is a crisis,
right,
then nothing's a crisis.
There was one other thing that I have to call attention to.
Okay,
that my good friend Eliza Orlins, former
I saw Eliza do this.
Candidate for DA in Manhattan, and also happened to participate in the show Survivor, of which I am a huge stan, single-handedly brought national attention to another Survivor contestant's bill, who's now in the Kentucky legislature, his bill to remove first cousin from the list of relationships that constituted incest in the state. So he had introduced this bill, and it was going to make it no longer a crime to have sexual relations with your first cousin. And Eliza literally brought the world's attention to it. It was on late night. It was on CBS. It was on all the things on MSNBC. It did the rounds because of her social media that she did about it. So shout out to her. And also, what the F?
What the F?
Why is that the priority?
I don't know what's going on in Kentucky. I don't know. But
I'm from very close to Kentucky. I'm from Ohio. I'm from very close to Kentucky. And I'm like, you don't speak for those people either. You don't speak for anybody with that. That's not what that state is about. I will defend Kentucky by proximity and say, I don't know what you're thinking doing that, but get out of here. I'm glad that, and it's no longer happening. It got shut down.
They withdrew the bill.
Yeah.
I wonder
They're like, it was a mistake.
Oh, okay.
I accidentally wrote the bill.
Right. Yikes.
Well, we can't end on incest, so help me out.
Let's do a nice little good vibe goodbye. And we're going to talk about something that's actually kind of complicated, but it is fundamentally or objectively good. And people are beginning to feel that way, which is the economy.
Ooh.
So the stock market is doing pretty good. That's a good vibe.
The stock market is good. It hit 2 record highs this week. So there were 2 really excellent economic indicators for the week. As you just said, major that the stock market is doing well, but that doesn't capture like the well-being for everybody, right? And I hear that all the time. Like that's not representative of everybody's reality, which is true. Another metric that we use to capture that, if we had anything that was close to a vibes metric, it would be the consumer sentiment index, right? It's like this way to measure how people are feeling about the economy, how people are, what their purchasing habits are, and like how they're feeling about their spending power. And that has had the largest swing in a positive direction for like the last 30 years. And so it's at its highest level in a couple of years, but the jump from December to January was the largest since like the early 90s. And so it shows that the economy and the vibes are both headed in the right direction at a critical time, of course, for the election in 2024, but also just for people to feel like they're getting out of the slump that they might have been in and entering 2024, new year, new you, new budget.
Good vibes. Let's go.
Fierce.
That's all the vibes for this week. Thanks for listening. We really want to hear from you. Yes, you can participate in our group chat. Send us a note, a story, a question, record a message on your phone, and send it to us at vibes@couriernewsroom.com. And since democracy hinges on vibes only, we're going to be here each week to keep checking them. So tune back in, same time, same place.
Vibes Only is a production of Courier, a civic media company that protects and strengthens our democracy through credible, fact-based journalism and seeks to create a more informed, engaged, and representative America. Vibes Only is produced by Devin Maroney, with support from Courier's Kyle Tharp, R.C. DeMezzo, and Daniel Strasburger. Tara McGowan is founder and publisher of Courier.